Another story that I want to talk about, and we touched on this on Friday's show as well. This, for better or for worse, is the story that I just can't seem to get away from. I kind of, on the one hand, really do want to get away from it. We are on the cusp of electing this Marxist Islamist radical as the mayor of America's most important city, America's flagship city on the world stage. There are massive elections in Virginia and New Jersey tomorrow as well. But the firestorm and the dust up and fallout, all of the above, it all continues in the aftermath of Tucker Carlson, the erstwhile king of cable news, turns right-wing provocateur and gadfly, if you can even call him right-wing at this point. The attention continues to focus on this now infamous interview that 1 week ago, last Monday, Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes, who is the leader of his own online army of neo-Nazi trolls called the so-called Groypers. Nick Fuentes, who is, at this point, we can probably say has probably surpassed David Duke as being the nation's most infamous Holocaust denier. Not just a Holocaust denier and a dripping Jew hater, by the way. Nick Fuentes is also astonishingly racist. He has called Vice President J.D. Vance a race traitor just for having the audacity to marry the love of his life, an amazing woman, Usha Vance. Just a disgusting slob of a human being. He has said that women actually want to be raped. Incidentally, if you want a full rundown of all the various insane things and disgusting things, abhorrent, appalling things that this little stupid closeted homosexual troll Nick Fuentes has actually said, you can actually then go over to our longtime friend Ben Shapiro, who has a whole episode on this today. So I do recommend, after you finish with this, then you go ahead and watch that show as well. But last we checked in, we discussed this a little bit on Friday's show. The Heritage Foundation, the longest-standing think tank on the right, currently led by Kevin Roberts, who is a personal friend of mine. Kevin came on our show in the first year of doing our show, probably about 3.5 years ago or so. I actually was also one of Kevin's very first guests on his show, The Kevin Roberts Show. In fact, to this day, if you go to the Heritage Foundation's headquarters in Washington, D.C., you go to the basement floor, the ground floor, and you walk down one of the aisles, you will literally see a photo hanging on the wall of me appearing on The Kevin Roberts Show. So I say all that because it brings me no pleasure whatsoever to talk about the horrible, horrible situation that Dr. Roberts has put himself and his institution in with the fallout of this Tucker Carlson Nick Fuentes interview. For context, Kevin, following his predecessor, K. Cole James, who was an ineffective at best and a deeply squishy at worst president of the Heritage Foundation, after the K. Cole James era, when Kevin first came in to run the nation's most important conservative think tank, starting in early 2022, he started to turn the organization in a more relevant direction, in a more MAGA-friendly direction, a more Trump-friendly direction, whatever you want to call it. Among the things that he did around the time that Tucker Carlson was still the king of cable news on Fox News was to begin to embrace Tucker Carlson. In fact, at the gala for the 50th anniversary for the Heritage Foundation, a gala that was in April 2023, outside D.C., a gala that I personally attended at the Heritage Foundation's invite, I was there, Tucker was actually the keynote speaker. And they did that right around the time he was fired from Fox. It was actually literally 3 days before he was fired from Fox News. And since then, Dr. Roberts and Heritage have welcomed in Tucker Carlson into the embrace of the organization. They have used donor money, it seems, to pay for wildly overpriced advertisements on the Tucker Carlson show. And in this now infamous video that Kevin released last Thursday, which frankly looks like a hostage video, that was my read of watching this video, he says that Tucker Carlson will always be a friend of the Heritage Foundation. And to be clear, the video is astonishingly bad. It is egregiously bad. It is one of the most profound acts of moral and political cowardice that I have ever seen in my entire adult lifetime. And it turns out that his now former chief of staff, who has since been demoted, possibly fired, the rumors are now swirling, was the one who actually wrote this speech, a truly absolute piece of garbage that individual is, and he has now paid the price for it. But the buck ultimately does stop with Kevin Roberts for giving this astonishingly bad speech, dripping with some of the most unmistakable, egregious, anti-Semitic, you can't even call them dog whistles. I mean, these are siren blasts that you can hear for a country mile. These are not dog whistles. Referring to Tucker's foes as a venomous coalition serving someone else's agenda. Who could that agenda be? Who could those people be? The fundamental problem is this. What Kevin is trying to do, and what Tucker's various defenders after this Carlson Fuentes dust-up are trying to do, is they're trying to defend Tucker's decision to have this conversation while still saying that, oh, you know, Fuentes is still a punk, we don't agree with him, but let's have the conversation. But the problem actually is only to a small extent with Nick Fuentes. The problem is Tucker Carlson. By saying that we're not cool with Nick Fuentes and we want to defeat his bad ideas, but we're actually okay with Tucker Carlson, you're basically saying that we want to defeat Hitler and the Nazis, and the way to do that is to double down on more programming by Father Coughlin. Father Coughlin, who was the most infamous anti-Semitic broadcaster in the FDR years in the pre-war era, spreading horrific libels and slander against the Jews. Tucker Carlson has become the number one progenitor, propagator, and disseminator of toxic anti-American, anti-biblical, anti-Western civilizational ideals. The problem is not really Nick Fuentes. The problem is Tucker Carlson. And unless and until Kevin Roberts, the Heritage Foundation, and all of the American right, all of MAGA, all of the conservative movement, unless and until we all come together and realize the absolute moral monster, the unmistakable coward, and just the hideous broadcaster that Tucker Carlson has tragically descended into following his ouster from Fox News, unless and until we all have that reckoning. Dr. Roberts, Vice President Vance, all of Tucker's close allies, unless and until we have that, this is going to keep on happening and happening and happening, because they will not be satisfied until the Jews are kicked out of the right, Christian evangelicals are severely diminished, if not kicked out altogether, and MAGA is destroyed. That is their goal. And here on this show, we're going to fight back repeatedly, and we're not going to let that happen to the best of our abilities.